The afternoon sun burned over the wide Arizona desert as Ethan drove his old pickup along the empty highway. Dust trailed behind his tires, swirling like smoke in the shimmering heat. He had been on the road for hours, heading back from a small construction job near the mountains. He liked these quiet drives. The desert gave him space to think. No noise, no city traffic, just the wind and the dry smell of mesquite. Up ahead, something caught his eye. On the side of the road, near a broken fence, stood an elderly woman beside an old red truck with its hood open. She was short, her back slightly bent, and her gray braid hung over one shoulder. Ethan slowed down and pulled over a few feet ahead of her. When he stepped out, the heat hit him like a wave. "Ma'am, you need help?" he asked gently. The woman looked up, her dark eyes sharp yet calm. Truck stopped. "No start now," she said with a soft accent. She wore a long skirt and a faded shawl, and her wrinkled hands gripped the edge of the truck hood. Ethan took a quick look under the hood. The engine was dry and dusty, the battery almost dead. He went back to his truck and brought some water for her first. She hesitated before taking it, then nodded gratefully. He could see she was tired. The desert sun had no mercy on someone her age. "Name's Ethan," he said, offering a friendly smile. "Let me take a look. I work with engines sometimes." The woman introduced herself as Naya. She didn't talk much, just watched quietly while Ethan worked. He cleaned the battery connection, checked the cables, and after a few tries, the old engine coughed back to life. Naya's face brightened and she touched her chest lightly in thanks. But when she tried to drive away, the truck sputtered again and stopped. Ethan sighed. "It won't make it far, ma'am. I can take you home if you'd like." "Where do you live?" For a moment she hesitated. She studied him as if weighing his intentions, then nodded slowly. "Far Dirt Road. I show you." Ethan helped her into his truck, turned the air on low, and followed her directions. The road turned from cracked asphalt to hard desert soil, winding between rocks and thin, dry bushes. He drove for miles, passing only a few wooden fences and scattered horse corrals until the land opened into a small settlement. There were maybe 4 houses made of old wood and adobe. Chickens pecked around a dusty yard and smoke rose from a small chimney. When they arrived, Naya thanked him softly. "You stop when no one else stops," she said. "Good heart." Ethan carried her groceries inside, a few bags of flour, canned beans, and medicine. He refused the money she tried to press into his palm. "Keep it," he said kindly. "I was just driving by," she smiled faintly. "You helped me. That is remembered." Ethan didn't think much of the words at the time. He simply nodded, waved, and headed back toward the road. But as he drove, he kept glancing at the sky. Dark clouds were building fast, rolling over the horizon like heavy gray curtains. By nightfall, the wind had turned wild. Thunder rumbled far off and lightning flashed across the desert. Ethan's thoughts kept returning to the small house and the old woman alone in the storm. After a few minutes of arguing with himself, he turned his truck around. When he reached the settlement again, the rain had already started. The ground was slick with mud, and the horses in the corral stamped nervously. Ethan ran to the house and knocked. The door opened, and there was Naya, calm as ever, wrapped in a blanket. She looked surprised but not afraid. "You come back," she said softly. "The storm looked bad," Ethan answered. "Just wanted to make sure you're all right." She motioned him inside. The room was small but warm, with a wood stove glowing in the corner. The smell of herbs and burning cedar filled the air. Ethan noticed a few old photos on the walls, black and white portraits of Apache families, warriors on horses, children in traditional clothing. Naya poured him tea made from desert sage and sat across from him by the fire. "Granddaughter coming soon," she said, stirring her cup. "She walked from Canyon, collect herbs." Ethan nodded, though he glanced nervously at the door. "Hope she's not caught in the storm." "She's strong," Naya said with quiet pride. Outside, the rain grew heavier. The sound against the roof was steady and hard, and now and then, wind pushed through the cracks, whistling like a flute. Ethan thought about leaving, but decided against it. Something about this place, this moment, felt important in a way he couldn't name. Hours passed before the latch finally turned. The door opened and a young woman stepped in, soaked to the skin. She wore a long, dark coat, her hair heavy with rain. She stopped the moment she saw Ethan. For a few seconds, neither spoke. "This Ethan," Naya said with a smile. "He helped me on road today." The young woman nodded slowly, her eyes studying him. "I'm Alina," she said quietly. "Thank you for helping my grandmother." Her voice was calm but carried warmth beneath it. She turned to help Naya with the fire, moving gracefully, her hands steady. Ethan offered to help, but she shook her head politely. "You are a guest," she said. "Please sit." He did, though he couldn't help watching her. There was something about the way she carried herself, strong, steady, like the land itself. The three of them shared dinner, simple corn stew and bread. They talked little. The storm outside filled the silence, making their words sound small and careful, but once in a while Alina looked across the table and smiled faintly at Ethan, and he felt something shift inside him. When the rain began to ease, Ethan stood up to leave. Naya thanked him again, pressing a hand to his arm. "Desert see your kindness," she said softly. Remember." Alina walked him to the door. The night air was cool now, the ground damp and shining under the weak light of the lantern. She stood beside him, arms folded, her eyes following the clouds that still moved slowly across the sky. "You didn't have to come back," she said finally. "I know," Ethan replied, "but I couldn't stop thinking about your grandmother out here alone." Alina looked at him then, really looked, and her expression softened. "Most people don't stop for us. You did." He shrugged, suddenly unsure what to say. It just felt right. She smiled a little, her eyes catching the faint glow of the lantern. "Maybe it was," she said, her voice quiet. Ethan nodded, then turned toward his truck. As he walked through the wet dirt, he heard her voice again. "Good night, Ethan." He looked back and saw her standing beside the doorway, her long braid glistening in the dim light. For a moment she looked like part of the desert itself, strong, timeless, and beautiful in a quiet way he couldn't explain. That night, when Ethan finally lay in his bed back home, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the old woman's calm eyes and her granddaughter's faint smile. He thought of the storm, of the empty road, and of how one small decision, to stop for a stranger, had somehow opened a new path he hadn't known existed. He didn't know then that his life had already changed. He didn't know that a simple act of kindness on a lonely road would soon lead him into a story of love, tradition, and fate that would stay with him forever. A week passed before Ethan went back to the little settlement. He told himself he just wanted to check if Naya's truck was running, but deep down he knew it wasn't only that. Something about that night, the storm, the quiet firelight, and the way Alina had looked at him stayed in his mind. The desert didn't feel so empty anymore. When his truck pulled into the same dusty yard, Naya was sitting on her porch, sewing a blanket. She smiled as soon as she saw him. "I knew you'd come back," she said kindly. Ethan laughed a little. "Guess you were right." She waved him closer. "Truck's still no good," she admitted, shaking her head. "Maybe you fix it." He lifted the hood and spent a good hour working while Naya hummed softly nearby. Every now and then, she offered him water or bits of dried fruit. The sun was lower now and the air smelled faintly of rain and cedar. He liked the calmness here. When he was done, he wiped his hands and turned around. Alina was standing by the fence watching him. She wore a pale blue shirt and jeans this time, her hair braided loosely. She smiled when their eyes met. "You came back," she said. "Your grandma said the truck needed help," Ethan replied with a grin. "I couldn't say no," Naya chuckled. "You two talk. I make dinner." She went inside, leaving them alone. Ethan walked over to the fence where Alina stood. "Fence still broken," he said, touching one of the loose boards. "I was fixing it," she replied. "But the wind keeps breaking it again." "Let me help," he said. They worked together quietly. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky with orange and pink. Their hands brushed a few times, and both pretended not to notice. Every now and then their eyes met and held for a second longer than either expected. When they finished, they leaned against the fence, catching their breath. Alina looked at the horizon. "This land is old," she said softly. "My grandmother says it remembers everything, kindness, laughter, even pain." Ethan listened, his eyes on her. "Maybe that's why it feels alive," he said. She smiled, turning to face him. "You see it too." Naya called them in for dinner soon after. They ate stew again, simple and warm. Ethan told them stories from his life. How he'd grown up helping his father fix engines, how he'd lost his parents young, how he'd moved from place to place working construction jobs. He didn't usually talk much about himself, but something about Naya's calm eyes and Alina's quiet listening made him open up. After dinner, Naya brought out a small wooden box. She opened it carefully and took out a hand-woven pouch made of soft leather, decorated with tiny beads. Inside it was a turquoise stone shaped like a hawk. She held it out to Ethan. "For you," she said. He blinked in surprise. "For me? Why?" "You helped when others didn't," Naya said simply. "This stone keeps travelers safe, but it also means you are welcome here." Ethan hesitated. "I can't take this. It looks important." Alina stepped closer. "We made it together," she said quietly. "It's part of our tradition. When someone shows true kindness, they are not forgotten." Ethan felt something stir inside him. He looked down at the small stone resting in his palm. It was warm from Naya's hands, smooth but powerful. "Thank you," he said softly. "I'll take care of it." Naya smiled. "Good. Then it take care of you too." From that day on, Ethan started visiting often. Sometimes he helped fix fences or clean the barn. Other times he just sat with Naya and listened to her stories about her people, their songs, and how they believed everything had a spirit: the land, the animals, the wind. Alina worked with him side by side. They laughed more each day. She showed him how to make tea from desert herbs, and he taught her how to tune an engine. Their friendship grew naturally like the wildflowers after rain, quiet, patient, and full of color. One evening, while they were sitting outside, Alina said, "My grandmother thinks you were sent here for a reason." Ethan chuckled softly. "Maybe she just wanted a good mechanic." Alina smiled but didn't laugh. "No, she says the spirits guide the right people to the right places." She paused, then looked at him. Maybe she's right. For a moment, they just sat there, the air filled with the soft sounds of night. The distant call of an owl, the rustle of the wind through the sagebrush. Ethan didn't know what to say. He just knew he didn't want to leave. Days turned into weeks and the connection between them deepened. Sometimes Ethan brought small things from town, fresh fruit, nails for the fence or books for Naya. Each time, Alina greeted him with that same quiet smile that made his heart feel lighter. Then one morning he came and found Naya weaker than usual. She was sitting by the window, her eyes tired but peaceful. Alina looked worried, but Naya just smiled when Ethan walked in. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Just tired. Too many years, that's all." He sat beside her. "Can I get you anything?" She shook her head. "No, just listen." Ethan leaned closer as she spoke in a soft, steady voice. "You saved me that day, Ethan, but it was not by chance. You were meant to. The desert brings people together who are meant to help each other." He nodded slowly. "I'm glad I was there." Naya smiled faintly. "When I'm gone, promise me you'll look after Alina. She is strong, but strength still needs someone beside it." Ethan's throat tightened. "You don't have to worry. I'll always help her." Naya touched his hand gently. "I know." A few weeks later, Naya passed away in her sleep, wrapped in the same blanket she had been sewing the day Ethan returned. The whole settlement gathered for her farewell. It was quiet and respectful. Men sang old songs, women burned herbs, and the wind carried the scent of sage across the desert. Alina stood beside Ethan the entire time, her hand in his. She didn't cry much, but her eyes held deep sadness. After everyone left, they stayed by the small mound of earth where Naya rested. Ethan said softly, "She was right about everything." Alina nodded. She usually was. They stood there in silence for a long time, watching the sunset spread across the sky. The orange light touched the hills, the rocks, and finally the small turquoise stone hanging around Ethan's neck. That evening, back at the house, Alina placed her grandmother's wooden box on the table. She opened it and found one more pouch inside, unfinished with beads still loose. She smiled sadly. "She was making another one," she whispered. Ethan looked at it. "Maybe she wanted us to finish it together." So they did. Every evening they sat on the porch, threading beads under the soft light. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. But each night they felt her presence around them, the same calm, steady warmth that had first brought them together. Months passed. Ethan helped repair the roof, mend the barn, and take care of the horses. Alina tended to the herbs and kept Naya's traditions alive. The place felt alive again, not empty. It became home for both of them. One evening, as the sun was setting, they stood together at the edge of the land. The sky was a deep gold fading into purple, and the air smelled like rain again. Alina turned to Ethan, her voice soft. "You know, you saved her that day on the road, but she saved us too." Ethan looked at her, his heart full. She brought me here, he said quietly. And maybe she knew I'd never want to leave. Alina smiled, her eyes bright in the fading light. She did. She always knew. The wind rose gently, lifting a bit of dust and sage scent around them. Ethan took her hand and they stood there in silence, watching the last light fade over the desert. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he truly belonged somewhere. As the night deepened, the stars came out, bright, endless, and calm. The same road that had once been lonely and endless now led him home. And in his heart, he carried the memory of an old woman's kindness, a granddaughter's love, and a promise made under the desert sky that would never be forgotten.